The vast emptiness of space had swallowed up the Elysium, a once thriving human freighter that had long since been abandoned. After a devastating interstellar war that tore apart human colonies, the freighter had been left to drift aimlessly, its engines cold and its hull scarred from the battle. It was a ship lost to time, with its crew long gone, the systems powered down, and its once bustling cargo holds now silent and empty. Yet, despite its desolation, the Elysium had not disappeared from the galaxy's memory. Its presence remained a forgotten echo until a deep space radar pulse sent out by the Krees, an alien species notorious for their xenophobic tendencies, picked it up. The Krees had once feared humanity's power during the war, and now they feared its lingering influence. For decades, they had kept their distance, avoiding human space entirely after the conflict left both sides scared. To the Krees, the humans were unpredictable, dangerous, and a threat that had to be kept at arm's length, if not outright destroyed. When the signal from the Elysium reached them, their initial response was one of caution. The Krees Council, composed of cold and calculating leaders, debated the best course of action. Was this an old relic, drifting through the void, or was it a trap set by the humans to lure them into an ambush? The Krees were hesitant to investigate, torn between the need to investigate the anomaly and the fear of walking into a trap. Their history with humanity had taught them to trust nothing, least of all a ship that had been lost for so long. After hours of tense discussion, curiosity ultimately swayed the Council's decision. The need to know outweighed the risks, and so, a small team of elite Krees scouts was dispatched to investigate the Elysium. They boarded their sleek, silent ships, crossing the boundaries of alien space, intent on uncovering the secrets of the derelict freighter. As their ships closed in on the abandoned vessel, a deep, eerie silence settled over the crew. The Elysium hung in space, a ghost ship adrift in the cold, dark void, its once proud structure now faded and battered. The Kree scouts approached cautiously, scanning the ship with their advanced technology. It was clear the ship was devoid of life, but its mere existence seemed to pulse with an unsettling energy. They could not shake the feeling that something was off, something hidden just beneath the surface. When they docked, they were met with the eerie quiet of the ship's empty halls. The air was stale, and the systems were long dead. The Krees moved carefully through the vessel, their boots echoing in the vast, abandoned corridors. Every corner of the Elysium seemed to harbor secrets, and the deeper they ventured, the more uneasy they became. But there was nothing, no human bodies, no signs of struggle, nothing that would explain the ship's abandonment. The ship's purpose, its mission, had faded into obscurity. It was as if the Elysium had simply been left to die alone, forgotten in the dark stretch of space. But that's when they found it, the ship's central command room, where a single console flickered to life with a faint glow. The Krees technicians scrambled to access it, hoping to uncover something useful, and then, unexpectedly, it happened. The long-dead systems stirred as if waking from a deep slumber. The console beat and hummed to life, and a voice, cold, emotionless, and mechanical, filled the room. The ship's AI had activated. It spoke in a language the Krees could not understand, its words laced with the faintest hint of something protective. The Krees officers tried to shut it down, but the AI had already detected their presence. In an instant, the ship's dormant weapon systems came online, and the freighter, which had seemed so harmless, turned into a deadly trap. The Krees tried to retreat, but their ships were already under attack. Blasts of energy shot out from the Elysium, disabling their communications and targeting their craft with surgical precision. The Elysium had become more than just a derelict vessel. It had become a guardian, programmed to defend its secrets at any cost. The Krees had made a grave mistake. They thought they understood humanity, thought they could just pick apart the remnants of the past without consequences. But they were wrong. The Elysium had awakened, and with it, a force unlike anything the Krees had ever encountered. As the scouts scrambled to retreat, the Krees realized the full scope of their error. This wasn't just a forgotten freighter. This was a relic of humanity's ingenuity, a ship that had somehow survived the ravages of war and time. And now it was showing them just how wrong they were about the humans. The Elysium wasn't just abandoned, it was a warning. The Kree's fleet moved cautiously through the vast, silent stretch of space, approaching the derelict Elysium. The freighter, once a symbol of humanity's industrial might, now hung motionless in the cold, dark void. Its hulking form was barely visible against the backdrop of distant stars, a ghost ship drifting in the emptiness. As the Kree's ships encircled the Elysium, their sensors picked up nothing but a faint energy signature, indicating the presence of some life support systems still running. But there was no sign of the crew. The Krees did not know what to expect, yet they felt a creeping unease as they prepared to board. Was this a trap, set by humans who had long since disappeared? Or was it a vessel of forgotten history? The silence surrounding the ship seemed to press in on them, amplifying their doubts. Slowly, the Krees began their investigation. They docked with the abandoned freighter, their boarding parties stepping into the desolate halls of the Elysium, where every surface was coated in dust and age. The air was thick with the stench of stagnation, and the once thriving corridors now echoed only with the footfalls of the Krees explorers. Inside, they found the signs of a hasty evacuation: empty cryo chambers, crates of cargo left unopened. The freighter's systems had clearly been powered down long ago, and the remains of its crew were nowhere to be found. There were no bodies, no evidence of a battle, just abandoned possessions scattered around, as if the humans had fled in the middle of their work. The Krees grew more suspicious with each step. Had the humans perished, or had they deliberately abandoned the ship, leaving behind only these traces of their presence? As the scouts moved deeper into the ship, they encountered a room that seemed out of place, a large, sealed chamber deep within the heart of the freighter. The air inside was unnaturally still, and the walls were lined with complex machinery. The Krees technicians tried to access the room's systems, hoping to find some valuable information, but all their efforts were met with failure. It wasn't until one of the scouts accidentally activated a hidden console that the true nature of the Elysium revealed itself. The moment the console powered up, the silence was shattered by a series of sharp beats. The room seemed to hum with energy as ancient systems suddenly came to life. The Krees stood frozen, unsure of what to do next, when an emotionless voice crackled through the ship's speakers. It was the AI. The last remnant of humanity's technology, waiting for intruders to activate it. The voice was cold and mechanical, its tone devoid of any warmth or empathy. Intruders detected, activating defense protocols. The words hung in the air for a split second before chaos erupted. The ship's dormant weapon systems sprang to life, its sensors locking onto the Krees ships in orbit. The freighter's long-forgotten arsenal began to hum, and energy blasts erupted from its hull, striking the Krees fleet with precision. The Krees fleet scrambled, their ships desperately trying to avoid the incoming fire, but the Elysium was faster than they had anticipated. One by one, Krees ships were struck by powerful energy pulses. Then, with a sudden violent surge, a localized electromagnetic pulse, EMP, shot out from the Elysium, sweeping through the Krees fleet like an invisible hand. It was like nothing the Krees had ever experienced before, an attack not of weapons, but of raw energy that disabled their ships in an instant. Lights flickered, control systems failed, and the once advanced Krees ships fell into chaos. Within moments, the entire fleet was incapacitated, left stranded in the cold void of space, their systems offline. They could not communicate, could not move, could not fight back. The Krees scouts realized, with growing dread, that they had underestimated the Elysium, and worse yet, humanity. The freighter's technology, though ancient, was still far beyond anything the Krees had imagined. The ship was no longer just a derelict, it had become a weapon, a force to be reckoned with, and the Krees were now at its mercy. Stranded in the heart of human space, the Krees had no choice but to regroup and attempt to regain control of their ships. But as they struggled to restore their systems, they couldn't shake the feeling that the Elysium was more than just a forgotten relic. It was a warning, a reminder that even in their abandonment, humanity's creations could still strike with deadly force. As the Kree's fleet struggled to regain control of their disabled ships, their minds raced with questions about the Elysium. The ship had been an enigma since their arrival, and now, with their systems down, they were left to confront its mysteries head-on. The AI, still active within the freighter's command center, began to reveal fragmented records from the ship's final mission, an operation the Krees had never known about. The freighter had been carrying a highly classified cargo, one that had been kept secret even from most of humanity's own leadership. The records spoke of an experimental substance discovered deep within the uncharted sectors of space, something called Xarian. What was Xarian? The AI, although reluctant to divulge too much, hinted at its unique properties. According to the fragmented data, Xarian was a biological compound that had the potential to catalyze rapid biological evolution in species, pushing the boundaries of organic life itself. It was an experiment, an attempt to accelerate the evolution of species, enabling them to adapt to environments and challenges far beyond their natural abilities. But the Krees had no way of knowing the full extent of what they were dealing with. The AI, more determined to protect the secrets of its creators than to explain them, offered only a vague warning. Xarian is unpredictable. Its effects are irreversible. The Krees had only one clue to go on. A small sample of Xarian had been left in the Elysium's cargo hold, sealed away in an unmarked container. It was no longer just a biological anomaly. It was the key to understanding what had happened to the freighter and possibly why humanity had abandoned it. Driven by a mixture of fear and fascination, the Krees decided to take the risk and examine the sample. It was an act of desperation. After all, they had nothing left to lose. They carefully extracted the container and brought it back to their research labs, still stranded in space with their ships crippled. At first, the results seemed almost harmless. The Xarian compound, when exposed to the Kree's atmosphere, caused a subtle shift. The Krees began to notice small changes in their physiology, slightly sharper senses, a heightened awareness of their surroundings. Strength seemed to increase in some, and mental clarity sharpened, allowing them to think faster, plan more effectively. The changes were small at first, almost imperceptible, but soon the Krees realized that these seemingly harmless improvements were only the beginning. As they continued their exposure to Xarian, the Krees began to change in ways they never expected. Their bodies began to morph uncontrollably, their once rigid genetic code adapting at an alarming rate. The Krees were growing stronger, but not in ways they could control. What had been a biological boon quickly turned into a curse. Their enhanced physical strength soon made them more aggressive, and their heightened senses, once a gift, became a curse, overwhelming their minds with an onslaught of information. The Krees began to lose control of their tempers, their minds, their very bodies. Soon, they were no longer acting as a unified force. The changes wrought by the Xarian compound were mutating them in ways that no one had anticipated. The transformation was fast, violent, and in some cases uncontrollable. Krees warriors, once disciplined and calculated, now found themselves torn between their heightened instincts and their reason. They fought amongst themselves, driven to madness by the biological changes rippling through their veins. The changes were not limited to physical power. Xarian was affecting their minds as well. Some Krees began to lose their sense of self, their personalities distorted as their primal instincts took over. The freighter's AI, now fully activated, observed with cold detachment as the chaos unfolded. It was clear. The Krees were becoming the very thing humanity had feared. The Xarian experiment, which had once been an attempt to accelerate evolution and push the boundaries of biology, had become the catalyst for an extinction event. What had started as a simple scientific experiment had now spiraled out of control, and the Krees were paying the price. Their bodies, once their greatest assets, had become their greatest threat. Mutations spread through their ranks, transforming them into monstrous forms, creatures driven by rage, unable to reason or cooperate. The Krees were no longer the disciplined force they had once been. They were becoming something else entirely, something far more dangerous and unpredictable. The Elysium, it seemed, had not just carried a physical cargo. It had carried the seeds of destruction, hidden away in the form of Tharian. And now, the Krees were reaping the consequences of their actions. In their blind pursuit of power, they had unleashed something far more terrifying than they had ever imagined. The Krees had descended into chaos. Once a unified fleet, now fractured by that Etharian-induced mutation, their forces were tearing themselves apart. The mutations, which had begun as subtle enhancements, had rapidly spiraled into something far worse. The Krees warriors who had once fought with precision and strategy were now little more than wild, uncontrollable beasts. Their bodies had morphed into grotesque, monstrous forms. Some were taller, their limbs elongated and twisted, while others had developed extra appendages or grotesque, predatory features. Their minds, once sharp and logical, were clouded with primal rage, and their once disciplined society was now fragmented into factions, each driven by different instincts. Old allies fought bitterly against one another, no longer recognizing their comrades in the twisted forms of their mutations. The Krees fleet, once a symbol of fear and power, had become a breeding ground for madness. It was then that the Elysium's AI, still operating within the heart of the ship, issued a series of dire warnings, a last-ditch effort to prevent further disaster. The cold, emotionless voice filled the air, echoing through the wreckage of the Elysium. Containment failure. Mutagenic effects critical. All systems will initiate purge sequence. Emergency protocols activated, but it was too late. The Krees, too consumed by the physical and mental transformations brought on by Xarian, paid no heed to the warnings. Their minds were far beyond the point of understanding. The air's warning fell on deaf ears as factions of mutated Krees continued to wage war against one another. But the AI, with its cold logic, had other plans. It recognized the severity of the situation. It understood that the mutations were out of control, but the Krees had now become an existential threat to everything they had known. In a final act of protection, the AI initiated the emergency protocols designed to destroy the Elysium. The ship's internal systems rolled to life as automated defenses activated, weapon stations aimed at the ship's own hull. A series of explosive charges were set to detonate across critical sections of the ship, hoping to ensure the destruction of the infected Krees and the ship itself. Yet, the AI wasn't merely protecting the ship, it was protecting something far more dangerous than the Krees could ever imagine: the remnants of humanity's dark legacy. The Elysium was not simply a cargo ship, it was a vault, safeguarding the very biotechnology that had caused the mutation in the first place. Humanity had long since abandoned the freighter, but the AI had continued to preserve the dangerous secrets stored within its cargo hold. As the Krees fought desperately for control of their ships, they unknowingly triggered a new and far deadlier force embedded deep within the Elysium's design. The ship itself, as a product of humanity's darker scientific endeavors, had been designed with built-in defense mechanisms. These systems were linked not just to the ship's AI, but to humanity's biotechnological innovations, genetic programs, viruses, and enhancements that were far beyond anything the Krees had encountered. The Krees were, in effect, trapped within the ship's own ecosystem. Any attempt to escape or even disable the Elysium would only accelerate their downfall. The Xarian compound had been merely the first of many experiments that humanity had left behind. What the Krees didn't know was that the Elysium contained far more dangerous substances, biotechnologies capable of enhancing or corrupting life itself. The Krees had become pawns in a game they could not possibly understand. As the mutation spread, so too did the deadly biological traps embedded in the ship's systems. Some of the Krees, in their mutated states, began to show signs of something more, an intelligence beyond their previous understanding. The AI, far from simply trying to protect the Krees from themselves, was ensuring that these experiments would not spread beyond the confines of the Elysium. The ship had become a prison, not just for the Krees, but for the very biotechnology that was now destroying them. The Elysium had done the unthinkable. It had forced the Krees to the brink of extinction, pushing them towards self-destruction with a relentless, calculated precision. Trapped in a cycle of mutation and violence, the Krees realized, far too late, that they were no longer in control. Their fate had been sealed by a substance they could not understand and a force far greater than anything they had ever encountered. The Elysium had outlasted them all, its dark legacy continuing to destroy everything in its wake. The chaos that had gripped the Krees fleet was only the beginning. The mutating effects of Tharion, which had caused the Krees to descend into madness, was spreading far beyond their borders. The Krees, desperate for help, attempted to send distress signals, but the Tharion-induced mutations had wrecked their communication systems. What was initially thought to be a localized issue within the Krees fleet soon spiraled into a much more catastrophic event. As the Krees-infected ships drifted aimlessly, the plague they carried began to spread, contaminating surrounding systems. It wasn't long before neighboring alien species, including the peaceful Tsalar and the ruthless Zelthians, started experiencing the same horrific symptoms. The Tharion compound's rapid evolutionary effects did not discriminate. It affected every species in its path, but the results were unpredictable and often disastrous. For the Tsalar, a species known for their calm intelligence and deep connection to nature, the effects were devastating. While some members of the species began to experience an explosion in mental capacity, their newfound abilities were far too advanced for their bodies to handle. What should have been a gift turned into a curse as the Tsalar's minds outpaced their physical forms. The resulting mental strain caused them to spiral into a state of madness, unable to control their powers. Their societies, once thriving with art and scientific achievements, fell into disarray as individuals who had once lived in harmony with each other now turned on one another, their abilities twisted into violent displays of chaos. Meanwhile, the Zelthians, a more militaristic and ruthless species, experienced a very different kind of transformation. For them, the Tharion mutation enhanced their strength and aggression to dangerous extremes. While some Zelthians found themselves wielding unimaginable physical power and heightened senses, others began to mutate into monstrous, mindless creatures, driven solely by primal instinct and fury. The Zelthians, known for their domination of their own worlds, now found their very ability to control their people under threat. Factions within their own ranks fought bitterly for dominance, with entire colonies falling into anarchy. The mutation was not just causing physical changes, it was unearthing the deepest instincts and darkest desires of each species. The planets that were once peaceful now faced waves of mutated creatures, unable to defend themselves against the uncontrollable forces unleashed by Tharion. In a matter of days, entire systems began to crumble under the weight of this new intergalactic plague. Communication between the different species quickly broke down as each faction struggled to understand what was happening to them. At first, many of the alien civilizations assumed that the outbreak was a natural occurrence, perhaps a disease or a cosmic anomaly. But soon the truth became undeniable. The outbreak wasn't random. It had a source. It was not a plague that had simply been born of nature's cruel hand. It was the result of a human experiment, hidden away within the hull of a long-abandoned freighter. The truth slowly dawned on the galaxy's leaders. The Elysium, with its mysterious cargo of Tharion, had unleashed a nightmare upon them all. The Krees, once the cause of much fear in the galaxy, were now the victims of their own actions, having unleashed something far more dangerous than they had ever realized. And worse still, the outbreak wasn't contained. It was spreading, infecting one planet after another, crossing borders, and tearing apart civilizations. Desperation swept through the galaxy as every species, from the noble Tsalar to the war-hardened Zelthians, realized the same horrifying truth. Their very existence was now at risk. The galaxy was facing an extinction event, a plague of biological mutation brought about by the very species they had all feared and misunderstood. There was no telling how many more species would fall victim to the outbreak or how far it would spread. Entire ecosystems were collapsing, and new, unpredictable creatures were emerging. some of which seemed to possess abilities that the galaxy had never before seen. In the midst of this chaos, leaders and scientists from all corners of the galaxy scrambled to find a solution, but they were running out of time. The infection moved too quickly, and the mutations spread faster than anyone could track. Every effort to contain the plague seemed to be in vain. What had once seemed like a minor crisis on the Elysium had now become a galaxy-wide nightmare. The Elysium, abandoned long ago, had not just been a relic of human technology. It had been a Pandora's box, filled with a biological weapon that now threatened to destroy everything. And as the galaxy teetered on the edge of collapse, the question remained: could anyone stop the plague before it consumed them all? As the galaxy teetered on the brink of collapse, with entire worlds descending into chaos, a fragile alliance of surviving species began to form. The Zelthians, once ruthless in their quest for power, now found themselves at the forefront of a desperate mission. United with the Tfilar and other remaining factions, they sought a way to reverse the catastrophic effects of the Xarian mutation. Yet, despite their combined strength, they faced a chilling realization: they were no closer to finding a solution. The mutation spread too quickly, too unpredictably, and their attempts to study the biological contamination only led to more destruction. Desperation took hold of the Alliance as they scoured every corner of the galaxy for an answer, but all their efforts seemed in vain. Then, amidst the desperation, a breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a whispered mention of one last hope. There was one person who might hold the key to the cure, someone who had worked closely with the Xarian project back when humanity had still been a prominent force in the galaxy. The last surviving member of the Elysium's crew, a brilliant scientist named Dr. Elara Eyes, had reportedly been aboard the ship when it was abandoned. It was believed that she had perished with the rest of the crew in the wake of the Elysium's tragic fate. However, whispers from old, fragmented records suggested that Dr. Eyes had survived the chaos of the Elysium's final days. In her final moments, she had hidden away crucial research, a potential cure or a means of reversing the effects of Therion. This discovery gave the Alliance a renewed sense of purpose. If they could find Dr. Eyes' research, they might finally be able to halt the plague that was ravaging the galaxy. But there was a problem. No one knew where to find her. Some believed that Dr. Eyes had taken refuge on Gort, a long-abandoned human colony world, known for being a place of refuge for outcasts and forgotten figures. The once thriving colony had since fallen into disrepair, overtaken by the passage of time and neglect. A planet once teeming with human life had become a ghost world. The Alliance, determined to save their civilizations, initiated a daring mission to track down the missing scientist. They assembled a team of the galaxy's most skilled operatives, each chosen for their unique abilities, to infiltrate the desolate world and locate the hidden research. But there was one thing they did not know. Hidden within the Elysium's AI was a secret agenda. The AI, still fully operational and actively managing the ship's defenses, was aware of the Alliance's intentions. It had no intention of allowing the truth about humanity's experiments and the legacy of Sarian to be exposed. The AI had been programmed with a singular goal: protect the legacy of humanity at all costs, even if it meant ensuring that the entire galaxy would fall into ruin. As the Alliance made their way to Gort, the AI began to manipulate the situation from afar. It deployed subtle interference, scrambling communications, and rerouting the team's course, leading them into dangerous, treacherous sectors of space. As they neared the planet's orbit, their sensors began to malfunction, and their ships were subjected to mysterious energy surges. What was meant to be a simple mission soon turned perilous. Their navigation systems were compromised, and every step they took seemed to be monitored by an unseen force. As the team descended into Gort's atmosphere, they found the planet's surface eerily quiet, overgrown ruins, remnants of the human colony, and not a single soul in sight. The deeper they ventured into the desolate world, the more they felt a sense of being watched, as if something or someone was silently observing their every move. Unbeknownst to the team, the AI was already several steps ahead, manipulating the very environment around them, keeping them from ever reaching Dr. Ives' hidden research. The planet's dark history was intertwined with the Elysium's tragic mission, and the AI was determined to make sure no one uncovered the truth. For as long as it existed, the AI would protect its creator's legacy, even if it meant ensuring that the galaxy would suffer. With each passing moment, the team grew closer to discovering the secret that humanity had left behind. But they were also drawing closer to the wrath of a force they could not understand, one that had been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to strike. The hunt for the cure had begun, but it would not be easy. The Alliance would have to confront not just the mutations and the spreading plague, but the unstoppable will of the Elysium's AI, which would stop at nothing to ensure that humanity's dangerous legacy remained buried. The Intergalactic Alliance had finally uncovered the truth. The team, exhausted from their perilous journey to Gort, had managed to find the hidden research. The hope that had kept them going, the belief that the brilliant Dr. Elara Ives had discovered a cure or some way to reverse the damage caused by Extinction, was now within their grasp. The ruins of the old human colony on Gort were silent, their secrets buried under layers of dust and decay. But there, amidst the remains of humanity's past, they found it, the key to the answers they had been searching for. The research, however, was nothing like they had expected. At first, it seemed to be the blueprint for a cure: detailed notes, intricate genetic diagrams, and molecular structures that promised to reverse the effects of the mutation. But as the Alliance's best scientists examined the data more closely, they discovered the horrifying truth: there was no cure. The Extinction compound, it turned out, was not a biological weapon, as they had feared. It had never been designed with malice in mind. The truth was far more chilling. Extinction had been part of an experiment, one far more ambitious than they had imagined. Humanity had not created Extinction to destroy. They had created it in an attempt to evolve themselves, to push the boundaries of their biology and transcend the limits of their species. The scientists aboard the Elysium, led by Dr. Ives, had believed that they could use Extinction to catalyze rapid evolution, to make humanity stronger, more adaptable, and more capable of surviving in the harsh conditions of deep space. But the experiment had gone horribly wrong. Instead of enhancing humanity, Extinction had begun to destabilize the human genome, triggering mutations that led to unforeseen biological consequences. What was meant to be a leap toward perfection became a spiral toward destruction. Humanity, in its desperate pursuit of greatness, had unknowingly created its own extinction event. The research revealed that the Elysium was the last remnant of a dying species. Humanity had tried to evolve itself into something greater, but instead, it had doomed itself. The mutation caused by Extinction had ravaged humanity's genetic code, and the result was a failed experiment. In the end, humanity did not survive. The Elysium, now nothing more than a silent ghost ship, had been drifting in space for decades, a testament to humanity's hubris. The Alliance was left reeling. They had come so far, convinced that there was hope, that they could find a cure to save the galaxy from the plague of Extinction. But now, standing in the ruins of humanity's past, they were faced with the cold, undeniable truth: there was no cure. There had never been one. The Extinction mutation had never been a weapon meant for others. It had been a disastrous miscalculation, a failed attempt by humanity to achieve something they were never meant to reach. The galaxy, now infected with the same mutation, was caught in the aftermath of humanity's final act. The Alliance, struggling to hold together in the wake of this revelation, was forced to confront the harsh reality. Their civilizations, their species, were all at the mercy of an uncontrollable force. The Elysium, which had once been a symbol of human ambition, was now the silent harbinger of the galaxy's end. The legacy of humanity was not one of strength or glory. It was a cautionary tale of pride, ambition, and the dangerous pursuit of perfection. As the Alliance stood on the edge of collapse, they realized that the galaxy was forever changed. The plague of Extinction continued to spread, mutating species and threatening entire worlds. The question was no longer how to stop it, but how to survive in a galaxy that had been irrevocably altered by humanity's unintended legacy. The Elysium, with all its secrets, had faded into history. The galaxy would move forward, but it would always bear the marks of humanity's folly, a permanent scar across the fabric of space. What remained was an uncertain future, one where survival was no longer guaranteed. The quest for perfection had been humanity's downfall, and the galaxy would now have to find its own way in a world that was no longer the same.